Okay, so jumping into this top section, we have file, edit, scene, puppet. All of this up here deserves its own video because a lot of action happens up here. The most common buttons you'll need to know up here is save project as, very essential, or save project. Import is how you would import new puppets, backgrounds, objects, things like that. Export is how you can export a video with encoder. Video with alpha is how you do it with a transparent background. And then if you're building your puppet out and you're done building it, you export your puppet to create a puppet file. There's other options in here. Those are the most common ones I use. Quick export will export a video, but in my experience, it has been buggy in the past. And I've sent off videos that were like 6 frames a second. It was very slow. So I typically don't use quick export. Copy media files into project folder. That's one we talked about in the past. Very essential. Every time you finish a project, before you export it, before you save it, before you send it off, you click that button. And then exit, which is Control Q, which is terrible. Adobe, if you see this, change the default from Control Q, because Control 1 is to create a 1-frame take. And you know how often I accidentally hit Control Q when I try to hit Control 1 and it quits the whole program? So that's just my little soapbox. Jumping into edit. We have undo and redo, cut, copy, delete, duplicate, split, which this is all tools you can use in other ways. I typically don't access them in the edit menu. Keyboard shortcuts to turn off that pesky Control Q. And preferences, jumping into preferences. This is where you would change your microphone input, your sound output. And right here you can control your lip sync, how many visemes get detected, less or more, and how much your camera has to do with what's being seen on screen. So strong means it'll see your lips regardless if it hears the sound and it'll translate it. None means it'll need sound in order to activate the lip sync. Live output. This is if you are using NDI, which will let you export your scene as a webcam source, essentially. We'll go over more about that in the NDI video. Going over the scene tab, we have new scene, which is the same as the button we saw down here in the rig video. New scene camera. This will add a camera, which is really handy, and you can edit that camera with position X. Oops, that's not what we wanted. We want the camera. Oh no, yes, that's silly. The backgrounds, default backgrounds, don't move with the camera, so it looks deceiving. Let's go back to like something like this. Okay. So new scene camera, position X, position Y, and zoom. I know it looks like it affects the character, but it also will affect any background art that is there as well. And that's how you add a camera. We'll have a video more of going over all of this later on, because there's a lot more to it than just the basics I showed you now. Add to new scene. I typically don't use that button. And take a snapshot. This one's awesome. This is how you use onion skinning, which is something we'll go over in a later video. But basically, if you're trying to create fluid movement and you're looking at a previous pose and you're trying to move to the next pose, this take a snapshot button will activate onion skinning when used properly, so you can make sure your movement's going to look good before you create it. Going over the puppet, we're going to hop into rig mode for that one. You can see we have a new empty puppet. We can just create a new puppet from scratch. Remove all the behaviors from a current puppet. And there's a lot of other options here. I typically don't use these. The only one I use the most is create clipping mask. You use that typically with the pupils, so they don't look like they come outside of the eyeball. It looks like they stay inside of them. Other than that, I typically don't use a lot of these buttons. coming into timeline, we need to jump back over to record. So going over timeline, we have arrange, which will move things up and down in your timeline if you have a lot of things, such as a lot of characters and scene art. But mainly the things I use in this section are compute lip sync take from audio and transcript, and compute take from scene audio. This will generate lip sync based on transcript and based off audio in the scene. To do that, we would need, so let's pretend that this second Stardust is an audio file, because you can import audio files. So we're going to pretend this one's an audio file. You would select your audio file, hold Control, and select your puppet, and then you would come to Timeline, Compute Lip Sync from Scene Audio. And that's how that button works. Of course, you need audio, whereas I used a second puppet. Also record a 1-frame take and record a 2-frame take I use quite often. We'll go over that more in the how to create recorded content video. Add markers I use a lot. They will add little, and you can make them, you can edit these to be notes, such as a jump here. That way you know at that exact scene or that exact frame action happens. Stop marker, obviously I believe will stop the play once it gets there. Yep, that's pretty handy. That's I haven't really used that, but that's handy. Let's see here. All of these I use in another section. Back into timeline. So we went over a lot of the rest of these in the record video. So we're going to jump over to window. This is where our workspace stuff is. And this is like where we see like the camera, microphone, and properties and all of that. These are our different workspaces. I usually don't edit these. I mean, I've edited mine, but that's only after you get really comfortable and you know like where everything is and where you prefer it. The help menu I've never really used. The tutorials section is probably a great resource. Keyboard shortcuts opens up. Let's see what that opens up. It opens up a downloadable version of the keyboard shortcuts from Adobe's website. That's pretty handy. And our version number.